Hey everybody, this is Vernier for Corners.com, and welcome to episode 3 of DJ Cokes is Robusto. So, in this episode, DJ is going to try to play fewer tables, which is an adjustment that we felt he should make from the last episode. And we're going to continue trying to come up with good lines and think about people's ranges a little bit. So, one more thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to thank a couple CR members for their input on some of these episodes. So, as for the feedback, and they've certainly helped Jan's game. So, these are the card members that I would like to give a special thanks to. So, without further ado, let's get to the action. Alright, here we go. So, here we are at the tables. Now, DJ has 4 tables, but like he's going to explain in a minute, there's a reason for that, and the main reason for that is he's opened up a bunch of tables, and now he's going to try to figure out which one to leave.
As you can see, I promised to tone it down to 3 tables, and I'm still on 4. That is because I try to table select as securely as possible. And what you see here, this table, this guy has come, a short stack has come to sit at my left, so I choose to leave the table by unchecking the auto post bind options. So when the blind is coming to me, I will be gone from the table.
So I really like that. When recently when I've been playing, I'll open up a bunch of tables and sit down at a bunch of tables, and then after an orbit or two, I have a pretty good sense of the kind of players that are there. Now, I mean, right off the bat, I kind of pick my tables based on stack sizes. So here with there's a couple of short stacks. This kind of 64 BB stack, I really like having at my table, especially on the right, because it doesn't seem like they're going to be a regular. This $1.70, that's definitely a short stack. This is kind of one of those medium stacks, 315, but definitely not between these two players on table 3. It's just not a good situation to be in. So, out of all the tables that we have, it appears like this is the one that we want to get rid of. I'm not too crazy. Actually, table 1 seems okay. I mean, you've got these two kind of like half stacks. They should be good money. And you've got this $2.70 type stack. I mean, that's I think that money's going to be gone pretty quickly. It's just a matter of who's going to get there. So, all right, let us continue with the action. I will say that I am commenting on this video couple of months after I did the first 2, so my own game has definitely evolved. But I think a lot of the advice given here is going to be pretty standard. I like checking behind with the King 10 on table 4. So it's a really draw heavy flop, and we're playing against a player who, after 26 hands, doesn't seem like he likes folding a lot. So there's a lot of draws that are going to peel this flop, and we don't even have any clubs. So I like just trying to get this to showdown. I think we have a lot of showdown value with our king high, and yeah, I just like trying to get there and seeing what's going to happen. So there's now, since we don't have a club, there's still no value in betting here, and this just puts even more draws out there. So I like checking it behind, and on the river, there's 65 cents in the pot, and this player bets a third of the pot, so we only have to be good about 25% of the time here. I have no idea what he could have. No, I just have no idea. I don't hate looking him up here. I don't hate folding. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, you're getting a good price. So sometimes you'll see somebody like value bet pocket threes there, but um, yeah, I think folding is pretty standard. I think calling is okay too. So now we get a limper. We have ace five. Ace five is one of those hands where I'm not crazy about isolating with it, but if we're on the button and we know that somebody limp folds a lot or limp calls and then folds the flop, then we can certainly try to isolate. But for the most part, with a loose player in the blinds, I just don't like. I think we're going to be better off just folding the ace five pre-flop. So I've been thinking a lot about stack sizes. While there's some break in the action, I'll talk about that. And players with like 40 BB stacks, like 40 to 70 BB stacks, I really like having these players at the table because um, it looks like, I mean, that's just some kind of random amount of money that they have that they're going to be playing with, and usually players like that are looking to play. They're looking to get into some pots, and they're going to be looking for action. So, for example, like this 620 stack it's just a perfect example of that. 545 stack, that's another very good example. If you have a table of full stacks, then a lot of them are going to be either regulars or they're going to have a concept of bankroll and things like that. So it doesn't mean they're good players. It just means that they're probably not going to be giving you as much action, or and I mean I'm generalizing. Of course, there's a lot of regulars that give you all kinds of crazy action. So all right, so here's another situation where DJ is going to talk about his reasoning for raising the 5/8 to 40 cents.
I know it's marginal, and I should make it. I'm not making it 30, but I'm making it 40, because frankly I don't want to be called. Um, I just want to steal their blinds, which I do right here.
And I actually don't. I'm not sure if a hand like 5/8 suited, if you raise it to 40 cents, if you're more likely to get folds or not. I mean, I would imagine if you really wanted to get folds, then you could raise it to like $1. But some people just call regardless. So I think let's look at these two players. This bottom man guy is playing 15-6. So I think even if you were to min raise the button and he doesn't have any good cards, he's going to be folding. And this Paco AG, we just don't know anything about him. We don't know any tendencies. We know he bought in for half. He bought in as a half stack. So that tells us he's probably not going to be grinding these games as a regular, because most regulars tend to buy in for. They just tend to buy in for a full amount, but still, I mean, given all that, I still like raising with marginal, like stealing hands like a 5/8 suited. I like raising to like 30 cents or even 25 cents in this situation, but we will continue with the action. So we raise pocket queens down on table 3, and our friend who's playing 65-12 flat calls. We get a really drivey flop, and DJ decides to take kind of an unorthodox line, which I kind of like, and he decides to check. And the reason I like that is because of the player. I think this player is going to be floating a lot on this flop, and he's also going to be, if we check, I think he's going to bet a pretty wide range. And I'm almost sure that we've got the best hand. So it's just a matter of how do we get the money in. So he ends up checking and solo bets 60 cents. So we've got some options. Now at the same time on table 2 we had a limped pot where we bet the flop with our open-ended straight draw, or with our flush draw and a gutter. And now we turn an open-ended straight draw with our flush draw. And the question is, should we bet or should we not bet? So I made up a little checklist of reasons to bet. So if we bet, we could take it down right now, which is good. We also control the size of the pot. So, this is one of those situations where the person's sitting on $3.40. There's 90 cents in the pot. I'm okay getting it all in on this on the turn, but if we were to check and if he was to bet, we would check raise all in. So I guess in that sense, given the stack sizes, it's number 2 is not really applicable. But let's say he was sitting on 100 BBs and we were to check and he was to bet, then raising is okay, but betting just allows us to control the size of the pot. And finally, if we I think he'll check behind a lot of really marginal made hands, like an ace-7 type hand, and if he does that, but I think he'll also call with him if we bet. So if we do hit, then the pot will be bigger and we'll be able to get more value. Up here to a min raise, I'm always calling the 7-8. I think it's a little bit too weak to be 3-betting, but if I had something like King 4 suited, I'd be 3-betting this guy. But 7-8 certainly plays well in position, so I'm going to do that. And finally on table 3, once he bets 40 cents, I kind of like just check raising all in on this flop, because I think we're ahead, and I guess that's the key thing. And there's just so many scary turn cards that are going to come that, yeah. And I think this player will call an all in with like any 6, any 10, any 9, maybe even like a 7 type hand. So it might seem like it might seem like we're overplaying our hand, but I do like check raising all in on this flop down here. So let's see what happens. Yeah, so I said versus this aggressive player, I just like raising check raising all in. I think $1.50 is too small, and I just don't like it. So now it's like the worst card in the deck. The flush gets there, the straight gets there. It's just a goofy situation. And up here, we get there. I just shove. I mean, there's 220 in the pot, and he's got 270 left. Maybe he'll like look us up with a 2-pair type hand or something. So I definitely would have called up here on table 1, just given the price that we're getting. And I would have called with the intention of raising some flops, because I think he's just the weak bet, or the weak raise. He's just looking to pick up the blinds, and I mean I've certainly done that. On the river, I mean I don't really like betting. I think I mean, it's like if you bet, you have to call here because he's bad, and because you have so much invested. So if you're gonna bet, shove. But otherwise, I think our flop play just made it awkward. And amazingly enough, we end up getting a call from a worse hand, and I guess I don't know. I'm just not sure what to say about that. So this is the kind of player. It's nice to see that he rebought. He rebought for 535, and this is exactly the kind of player that you want to have at the tables. Who's going to be? He ended up having 6-4, so he had an open-ended straight draw on the flop and nothing on the turn, and then river to pair of fours with I think his kicker, his 6 kicker was counterfeited by 4 other cards that were on the flop. But this seems like a good table. You've got somebody who's you have actually 2 full stacks. This player, Maudson Cotter, he would be a good player to have on our left, but got a fairly loose table and pretty good stack sizes. So I think our best bet is going to be just be wary of position and make sure that we open quality hands because we're going to be up against a lot of garbage. So a lot of these players, so 2 of these players are playing 30% of their hands, and so for example, so here this King 5 offsuit, this player's just been picking on our blinds every time. This would be a good spot to 3-bet him. Just make it 90 cents and just see how he reacts. He is a short stack, but he's playing. I mean, he has enough behind to warrant doing so. And he actually did show up with a legitimate hand there, but that does not mean he has raised small blind, big blind the last 3 orbits. So we do have to make a stand at some point. So now he raises on the button, and we pick up a legitimate hand. I think this is another one of those situations where we can 3-bet him. I don't hate a fold, but I kind of like a 3-bet better because our hand. I would never fold it in this situation. But our hand plays pretty well post flop, and if we flop a king or a jack, we're certainly going with it given the stack sizes. And yeah, and I also think we'll take it down pre-flop often enough to make that worthwhile. So both of these players seem to be playing pretty tight. If that's happening, you can even go down to raising 25 cents, or even min raising pre-flop. There's a couple advantages of doing that. For one, if they're just on autopilot, then you're risking 20 cents to win 15, so you're getting better odds. Second of all, if you pick up a hand that's playable and the stack sizes are deep enough, then you can raise it to, let's say you raise it to you min raise the button, you make it 20 cents, and they 3-bet you. You're just getting a much better price on your 3-bets than you would if you would have made it 40 cents or even 30 cents. So pocket 4s down here. I know I talked about raising 40 cents from early position and 30 cents from late position, but given how loose this table is, I actually don't. Pocket 4s have very little value post flop at this table unless they hit a set. So I actually kind of like raising to 30 cents in early position with some of my more marginal holdings. I mean, you could even make it 25 cents from early position, and I don't think these players. I don't think you're going to be playing with them often enough for them to realize that that your different bet sizes really dictate your hand strength. I think they're just going to be looking at their own cards. So at a table full of regulars, that's you don't want to keep your bet sizes kind of consistent, but at a table like this, at these kind of stakes, I think you just need to tailor your bet sizes to kind of manipulate things for your own good. So, new table, right off the bat, there's a silver star who is directly on our left, which means that he's going to be a regular because it's at the time that this was made, silver star was it was pretty. It's not easy to get at the micros, and we do have one of these 60 BB stacks that I talked about that I like having at my tables. The downside is we do have this Tony 1088 player who is playing a. He is playing a short stack. He's got 22 BBs. Here's Jan's showing us his graph, which recently he's been doing pretty well. Here we go. Yeah, so he's been doing well recently. He's up on a 5 buying upswing, and I can't remember exactly what he says, but so far so good. All right, back to the action. So unfortunately, our 60 BB stack left, and now we've got the shorty on our left. This guy, we don't have many hands on him. Oh, this is the crash guy. Never mind. Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought these stacks were Tony stacks. I mean stats. If that would have been the case, these are kind of the stacks of somebody who's going to be playing a professional short stack, and I don't see many professional quote unquote short stackers at these limits. But somebody who's playing that tight is basically just going to be looking to double up and leave, and you gotta approach these guys differently. So. Alright, let me see. This 8-9 early position open from somebody who's playing 10-3 is, certainly going to be a fold. I think. Oh, there's a discussion on the forums about the heads-up display stats. Whether they're a crutch, whether players can even play good poker without using the HUD. So I will I'll address that in a minute. The tens versus the solo guy, I'm starting raising. I'm probably gonna make it 50 cents since I'm gonna be out of position. He's gonna be playing all kinds of hands versus us badly. The flop is an ace high flop. I kind of like leading this. So actually, sometimes I'll check call. Sometimes I'll lead it. If I'm gonna lead it, I'm gonna lead it small, like 50 cents. I think we will get. We'll certainly get calls from an ace, but I also think he will flat call with like an 8 or a 5, and if he does flat call, I kind of like. I'll usually. You can bet small again on the turn just because his range is pretty wide. But after that, you should probably just check fold the river if he does end up calling you. The reason for betting the turn if he does call the flop is, like I said, his range is really wide on the flop. And if we bet the turn, I don't expect to get bluffed. But basically, I just set my own price. I would bet small. I would bet like 40% of the pot. And then if he raises us or if he flat calls the river, I'm just giving up. Of course, unless I hit a 10. But I hate. I would hate to check guess on the turn. If I check, I'm not checking a fold. So yeah, it just kind of sets my own price for showdown. But it's good to note that he did end up folding that flop. Some players once they call pre-flop, they're just never folding any kind of a flop. If they hit an ace, they're going to put you on kings and try to outplay you. If the flop is low, they're going to put you on ace king and try to outplay you. So the fact that he folded is pretty good and something for us to notice. So next time he does flat us on the flop, we'll know that he has something, or I should say, we know he doesn't have nothing. Pretty much the same way of saying the same thing. So. Alright, up here we get ace 10 and it's limped. If I'm playing a bunch of tables, usually I'm probably going to limp this, but I think raising this is a stronger play, and the reason for that is if I had something like pocket fives or pocket sevens, I would probably flat there and just try to play a multi-way pot with a hand that when it hits, it's really strong. This one hits much more often. So any kind of high cards are going to hit the flop 32% of the time, and when they do, you're often going to have either top pair, top kicker, or top pair, good kicker. So in this situation, I like raising this. So we do hit top pair on a fairly draw heavy board. So I do like leading this. I think we'll get calls from all sorts of draws, definitely a lot of tens. Obviously, the tens would be worse tens. The turn doesn't really change anything, and I kind of just like leading this again for value. I think that at this point, if he has a 5, he'll probably let us know. I think a 10 will continue. I think a flush draw will continue. So we bet about 2/3 of the pot. He thinks for a bit and he flag calls again. So yeah, at this point, Jan checks, and if I kind of like a check here, because if we check, then a missed flush draw is going to fire, and obviously we lose to a 5, but I think a 10 is going to fire as well. So by checking, we still get value out of 10s, and we also get value out of flush draws. If we bet, then the only thing a flush draw can do is bluff raises, but I mean, bet calling the river would be kind of nasty. He could have a hand like pocket eights and have a full house on the river, but just given the guy's tendencies, as I was saying, it's hard to infer after 9 hands. But I mean, he's played 4 out of 9 hands, and most really good players are not going to have stats like 44-11 after 9 hands. So yeah, so he does end up showing up with a busted flush draw, and we take down the pot. So I think bet kind of bluff catcher is ideal in this situation. Now, last hand we talked about the ace 10 being a good hand to isolate preflop because it's going to hit 32% of the time. Now we're in a situation where we have pocket fives and we have a couple of players. This MGG player he's got a short stack. Blues fans got a short stack. Tutili doesn't have a short stack, but he seems to be playing 40% of his hands after 10 hands. So a hand like pocket fives has a lot of value in a multi-way pot. So I really like overlimping here because I don't like folding because I want to play this hand versus these guys. But I think if we raise, fives they're just going to be difficult to play, and I don't want the blinds to fold. I want to keep them in the pot. down here on table 3, I kind of like, just given the stack sizes, I like 3-betting the ace queen. I think we'll get called by much worse. I don't hate a flat call, but I like 3-betting it versus a split better. One of the reasons I like 3-betting it is because he did seem to fold the on the ace high flop pretty quickly when we had pocket tens, so that kind of gives me reason. Well, I don't have enough hands on him, but I do think he's going to be mostly playing his hand. When we had the 6-4, when he had the 6-4 and we had the pocket queens and we ended up betting the river, so on the turn he didn't try to bluff us when the flush and the straight hit, and on the river he just flat called. So he seems to be playing pretty straightforward, even though he seems to be pretty loose. So I can comfortably 3-bet this, and if I hit any kind of a piece, then I'll go with it. If not, I will continuation bet, and I would expect him to give up. So now that would be my plan for the ace queen. And up here with the pocket fives, certainly don't like folding them. I like limping. Up here we had the 9-7 suited. We had a tied player open under the gun and another tied player flat call. And 9-7 suited versus that ranges, I think it plays just well enough to warrant calling out of the blinds. I think that we're almost never going to be dominated, so if we hit a 9 or 7, we're going to be good. And if we hit trip 9s or trip 7s, I think we're going to be good. And we could certainly hit a straight or a flush. So on this flop, once we have ace high, I think ace high is going to be good quite often. So I like check calling. Let's see what he does. So we do end up checking. On the turn, I kind of like leading because now we've got a gutter and 2 overs, and I think we're almost certainly going to be good. So I like leading the turn for like 35 cents. 40 cents is fine. It's pretty much the same thing. So we bet and he calls, and the river's an 8, and I don't think there's any value in betting. Betting is essentially, we're essentially bluffing, but I kind of like check call on the river. I think we're good. I just think we're going to be good very often. If not, he'll end up having something like 6-4 for bottom pair. I don't think he'll end up betting that though. So at the same time, there's a pocket 9s hand up here that's going on that I think is really interesting. So I'm actually going to spend the last part of the video specifically discussing this hand. But we'll finish up with DJ timing out on the ace queen hand. So I think he was thinking about all his options. I think checking the river would have been best. So alright, so let's get to the pocket 9s hand. So this is going to end up being the final hand of the video, but I thought it was interesting enough to warrant having a longer discussion about. So here we go. We get dealt pocket 9s in the big blind in a 5-handed situation. We get Jari raising under the gun, and MSG flat calls. Or it's going to, since I have psychic powers. And I'm going to will him to do so. We have 9s right now, and we have a couple of options. I think folding is out of the question. So the two options we have are flat calling or 3-betting. If we 3-bet, then we're going to have to, by 3-betting, we're essentially hoping to isolate the short stack. And he's, even though he's only played 12 hands, he seems to be playing just about every one of them. I think 83% means he's played 10 out of 12 hands. So his range is super, super, super wide, and nines certainly have that range crushed. So if we're able to get it all in pre-flop versus him, then we're more than happy to do so. We're going to have tons of equity. The disadvantages of doing that is if we 3-bet the nines and we get 4-bet by Jajari, or even flat called, then if we get 4-bet, then we're gonna have to pitch our hand, because even at the micro stakes, a 4-bet from somebody who seems to have a reasonably good stack and is not playing something like 83-60. Now, we only have 10 hands on this player, but I think the fact that he's playing 30% of his hands and has an aggression factor of 0.3 already starts becoming indicative of the kind of player that he's going to be. So after 10 hands, if he's playing somebody who's playing 30-10, if we extend that to about 100 hands, he's probably not going to end up playing 90-70. So yeah, it's only 10 hands, and I hear people say a lot on the forums or in the video reviews, how can you make any kind of an inference here? But I think 10 hands, yeah, I mean, you start getting some kind of an idea about the player. So 3-betting is an option. I kind of like flat calling in this spot and just going to see a flop and playing some post flop poker. So let us do that. I think 3-betting would have been a fine option too, as long as we fold to a 4-bet. So we do 3-bet, and we go to the flop. So now, again, we have some options. We can check call, we can check raise, or we can lead. And I kind of like leading for a couple of reasons. The main reason is, I think if we lead, and we can lead small, then I think Jujari is going to flat with a pretty decent range, and I think he's going to raise his over pairs, and I think MSG is going to flat with like a huge range, anything that hits this flop, any kind of gutter, any kind of pair, pocket fours. So I think if we lead and Jajari flats and MSG has any kind of a draw, I think he'll often shove, and then we can, because we've got the board crushed so badly, we can flat call here, and then it just puts Jajari in just an awkward situation. It kind of squeezes him. So because MSG is in the hand, I like leading this. If MSG was not in the hand, then I'll probably go for a check call. And if I check call and the turn becomes a scary card, then I'll probably lead the turn. So without further ado, that's kind of my liking here. So Jajari calls fairly quickly, and I didn't assign him a range for pre-flop range, but I'm going to assign him a range for getting to the turn here. Okay, so what do I think he gets to the turn with? He might be kind of a stubborn player and not want to fold any kind of pocket pair. So I took twos out of this. I do think he'll fold twos on this flop. Threes. Now he called fairly quickly, so I don't think he has an overpair, but I'm not going to discount that just yet. So um, he he could have a set. I think he would have thought if he had a set of threes or tens. I think he would have thought about it a little bit more. But again, I'm not going to discount that just yet. That's just kind of my hunch. I think if he had something like certainly sevens, eights, um, he would flat call fairly quickly. I think if he had a draw, um, like um, let's see, like 7-8 is a draw here, so he might flat call with that fairly quickly. Usually, though, a quick call is like a really marginal made hand, like a King 10 type hand, a Jack 10. Actually, Jack 10 would be perfect for this. So, but I think these are all the kind of hands. I even think he'll flat call once with overcards like Ace King, Ace Queen, because he thinks they're best. So, um, the majority of his hands are marginal made hands, like one pair type hands, though, and like hands that a 7 could improve. Um, like a 10-8 type hand now has a pair and a gutter, so or a 9-8 type hand, I should say pair and open and straight draw. So Queen 10, Jack 10 now has a gutter as well. So I think since that's the majority of his range, I like leading this again, and I like leading this for like $1.70 or so. Now, if he did slow play a big hand like a two pair type hand on the flop or a set, then I think he's going to raise those on the turn. And I think if he has an overpair, I think he's going to put in a raise because he's starting afraid. He's becoming afraid of the dryness of the board. And I actually think that if he did have an overpair like aces, kings, queens, or jacks, he would raise the flop because he doesn't want to go three-way with MSG. So, all right, let's continue with the hand. So DJ thinks for a bit and decides to fire out a bet. We bet half pot on the flop to induce some kind of a play for MSG, and we get called fairly quickly. So now that we got called fairly quickly, I'm gonna pause this. Now that we got called fairly quickly, I don't think he has an overpair. So let's look at the kind of range that I think he gets the river with. So I took out any kind of set. I do think he folds hand like sixes, fives, and fours. I think threes and tens don't get to the river. I think they end up raising the turn. So what kind of hands does he have? He could have 7-8 and pocket eights and 9-8 and 10-8. So I also think he can have queen 8, which gave him an opening in a straight draw, and he had a gutter on the flop, gutter and an over. So these are all the hands we lose to. We lose to. I took out Jack 8 suited, but Jack 8 suited should be included in that too. Jack 8 offsuit had had the nuts on the turn. I think he gets there, but there's a lot of still one pair type hands. So King Queen and King Queen suited and King Queen offsuit obviously have the nuts. He could have a lot of eights. He still could have a lot of tens. Ace 10, King 10, Queen 10, Jack 10. Jack 10 now has two pair, and but there's three to a straight. I mean 4 to a straight on the board. So it looks like there is some of the hands he had, like an open-ended straight draw, like with Queen Jack or a gutter with King Jack, end up getting a pair on the river. But again, it's kind of tricky. I kind of like betting small here as a blocker bet. If he has an 8, then we lose to an 8. But I think there's a lot of value to be gotten from a one pair type hand. So I like betting about half the pot, something like 270 and then folding to a raise. I don't think that he's going to. I think he's going to call with a lot of one pair type hands, and I think he's going to raise us. Raise us. He might flat with an 8, but if he raises us, we're definitely beat. So I like betting about 250 here, just because given where's given this range, I think there's a lot of value to be gotten from this range. He bets. Jan ends up checking, and he ends up betting 310 into 5 something. This is kind of a nasty situation because what we said, his ranges for getting to the river, the only hands he could be doing this for value with is the only hands he's doing this for value that we have beat are Jack 10. I think all other hands that had us beat, or all other hands that we were ahead of, that would probably end up raising the turn. Like 3s and 7s would end up raising the turn. I think any kind of other overpair would end up raising at some point. Probably the turn, possibly the flop. I would say the flop if you had Jackson up. So it's kind of a six spot. I think if we were to bet the river, we would have saved ourselves a little bit of money as far as trying to figure out, you know, I guess whether we're beat or not. We kind of set our own price for showdown. We could have probably even bet less. Could have probably bet like $2 into 5 something, and I still think he would call. I don't think we'd get bluff raised. But this is kind of a 6 spot. I think we're going to be beat here quite often with some kind of a random 8, like a 10-8 or a 9-8 type hand. So I don't hate a fold, but because players play badly, I don't hate a call here, and you could just end up seeing so many goofy type hands. So anyhow, DJ Cokes is gonna think about this for a little bit, and he's like, "What do I do? What do I do? I hate playing out of position." But I guess another advantage of 3-betting this pre-flop would have been that we would not have been out of position. So, but alas, the way the hand played out, I think the betting the flop and betting the turn were both really good plays. On the river, I kind of like a bet fold, but as played, we just ran into the nuts, and that's unfortunate. So that is the last hand of the video, and this is going to conclude the series. So please give us some feedback, and we definitely listen to the feedback, and we use it to make further videos. So thanks a lot, and this is Vernier for cardrunners.com.